There are moments in life when the universe seems to pause a deep breath before everything changes. Jeremy Wayne stood on the edge of such a moment, gazing at a polished building in the heart of New Proxima, a city that pulsed with alien life and quiet possibilities. He had come seeking answers to loneliness, or perhaps just an end to it. What he found instead would shatter every expectation he'd ever held about love, biology, and destiny. In a galaxy defined by infinite combinations of life, Stellar Bonds was an agency that promised the impossible perfect alignment between souls. His friend Kellen had assured him it worked. Jeremy, skeptical as always, had come anyway. A diplomat by profession, he was no stranger to negotiation, yet this felt different. He wasn't here to sign treaties. He was here because he was tired of the silence in his apartment, the echo of his own breath. He stepped through those doors as a man with one name, one species, one lifetime of experiences. What awaited him would challenge not only his understanding of himself, but the very role of humanity in a galaxy far more curious about them than anyone had realized. The AI welcomed him with clinical politeness. It measured not just his DNA, but the rhythm of his heart, the scars of his history, the longings buried too deep for words. And when it spoke, it declared with calm certainty, human males required more. Biologically, emotionally, reproductively. More, not in greed, but in design. And so, where one might expect a singular answer, Jeremy received two. They entered the room without ceremony, twin reflections of alien beauty. Blue-skinned, pink-haired, luminous in ways that defied logic. Lara and Mifra, sisters by birth, wives by algorithm, partners by some cosmic dance between human need and Azurian grace. He protested. Of course he did. No contract, no system, no galaxy-spanning software could override a lifetime of belief that love must be earned, that connection must grow. But the AI, indifferent to his shock, had already processed the binding agreement. His friend Kellen had signed as guarantor a gift, he said, a birthday surprise. Lara's voice was a song, Mifra's smile a question wrapped in fire. And Jeremy, caught between disbelief and the undeniable gravity of their presence, felt the first threads of something ancient, not lust, not duty, but possibility. They called him husband. They linked arms with him like it was the most natural thing in the world. And as they left the building together, Jeremy whispered into the silence of his own mind, "What am I becoming?" The city receded behind them, a swirl of lights and shapes. Jeremy barely noticed. His thoughts churned like a storm trapped in a bottle. Two wives, alien, assigned, not chosen. It violated every story he'd told himself about love, but not, perhaps, the deeper truth about being human. His apartment, once a fortress of solitude, now pulsed with foreign presence. Lara examined his artifacts, relics of Earth, symbols of meaning he no longer questioned. Mifra explored his food synthesizer, curious about the ways humans sustain themselves. They moved not like intruders but like gentle winds rearranging the dust of long-forgotten corners. He retreated, overwhelmed, into the sanctuary of habit. His office, his walls, his impulse to call someone anyone who could restore order. He reached the embassy. Legal authority. Surely this was madness that could be unraveled with the right signature, the right clause. But the law was a language written in context. And here, in this sector, under Azurian code, a contract mediated by AI was sacred, more binding than human doubt. The signatures his and his friends held power. 30 days of cohabitation, minimum. No escape without penalty. No dissolution without consequences. The call ended not with freedom, but with a roadmap through bureaucracy. Document, endure, trust nothing. But trust was not so easily contained. Not with Lara and Mifra waiting outside, dressed now in fabrics that shimmered like twilight on ocean water, welcoming him to a table set with care. He hadn't asked for a meal. He hadn't imagined that alien hands could understand his appetite. But they had studied him, not just his biology, but his preferences, not just his patterns, but his silences. They had made pasta or something like it with flavors both foreign and comforting. He ate slowly, cautiously, but with every bite, the walls inside him cracked a little more. They spoke of their world, Azura, a place of duality and binary stars, of harmony forged in twinhood. Lara's words were poetic, Mifra's precise. Together they painted a picture of a people who believed in balance, who matched not through desire alone, but through resonance. Jeremy listened, He offered pieces of earth in return, stories of courtship, of choice, of love earned over time. They tilted their heads in curiosity. Inefficient, they said. Beautiful, perhaps, but inefficient. He laughed, a bitter, honest sound that surprised him. And then the questions changed. They weren't about laws or biology anymore. They were about him, about his fears, his hopes, the weight he carried as a human in a galaxy that watched his kind with fascination and unease. He saw them not just two strangers from another world, but reflections of something deeper. The desire to be seen, to be understood. And when Mifra observed the heat rising in his face, when Lara stepped closer with a scent that awakened dormant senses, he didn't run, he paused, because something inside him whispered, not yet. That night, sleep did not come easily. Jeremy lay in the darkness of his room while the twins shared the guest quarters, and silence wrapped around him like a question left unanswered. In the stillness, he found no comfort, only echoes. Echoes of Lara's melodic voice, of Mifra's curious gaze, of the strange tension that pulls between them like an invisible tether. The contract, they said, required cohabitation. The word was cold, sterile. But what the AI failed to measure was nuance. Proximity was not intimacy. A roof shared did not mean hearts surrendered. And yet, Jeremy could feel something shifting, not just in them but in himself. When morning arrived, it brought not peace, but warning. A message blinked silently on his wrist display, encrypted and urgent. Counselor Price. She had found something in the corporate structure of stellar bonds, something hidden, something dangerous. They were to meet in secret. So he went, to a cafe tucked in the human district, a place that smelled faintly of earth, coffee, and old wood, as if time had bent backward for a moment. Price was waiting, a signal jammer humming softly between them. She wasted no words. Stellar Bonds was no mere matchmaking service. It was a collection hub, a genetic net cast wide. Every assessment, every pairing an experiment cloaked in romance. Jenks Corporation, the true entity behind the FOD, specialized in genetics. And they were interested in humans more than any other species. Why? Jeremy asked. Because humanity, it seemed, held potential no lab-grown blueprint could replicate. And human Azurian hybrids? A breakthrough, one they had tried and failed to engineer artificially. But natural conception, sparked through arranged unions like Jeremy's, offered another path. And now, with two wives assigned in bonds forming, Jeremy was no longer a client. He was a key. He left the cafe in a daze, the weight of conspiracy pressing into his chest. But when he returned to his apartment, he found color and warmth instead of danger. Decorations shimmered. Exotic food lined the table. The air was thick with perfume and anticipation. Festival of Union, they told him. A celebration of bonding. And as the first human Azurian triple match, he was to be honored. His mind screamed to run, to investigate, to tear down the walls around this corporate theater. But then they stepped forward, Lara in a gown that turned her into a living painting, Mifra in matching elegance. They looked at him not as agents, not as subjects, but as women who, despite everything, had begun to hope. And in their eyes, he saw no deception, only the same uncertainty mirrored in his own. He told them the truth about Jenks, about the tracking, the manipulation. They didn't flinch. We suspected, they said. Our bodies know more than we are taught. We waited to see if you would learn to trust us or use us. Now, they chose to trust him, and in that quiet exchange, beneath the weight of betrayal and ceremony, Jeremy felt something rare spark into life, allegiance. The Festival of Union did not whisper. It roared not with sound, but with grandeur. A crystalline dome pulsed with the colors of dusk and starfire, refracting every light in the city into a celebration of union, of convergence. Jeremy stood at its threshold with two wives at his side and an invisible target on his back. They called them guests of honor, first of their kind. A diplomatic curiosity turned cultural spectacle. But Jeremy knew better. Behind every smile was scrutiny. Behind every drone's lens, a calculation. The ritual was ancient. They said a blessing ceremony for new bonds. But in this case, it was also a stage. A platform where the union of man and Azurian would be paraded before a galaxy still learning how to spell the word together. They moved through the dome as one, Lara on his left, Mifra on his right. Their arms linked with his, their posture poised, but their eyes always scanning. Jeremy whispered beneath his breath, "Be ready. Trust no one." But they already were. The first confrontation came in the form of a man who was barely a man. Drex Vaughn, the Jenks executive whose name lived in footnotes and whispered warnings. He smiled without warmth. He looked at the twins like they were data samples with legs. He asked about progress. Not emotional, not relational, but reproductive. It was the word he chose. Cold, surgical, a single syllable that turned Jeremy's blood to ice. Beside him, Mifra stiffened. Her skin, normally cool and smooth, shimmered with a sheen of sweat. Her hand crept to her abdomen. "Something's wrong," she whispered. Vaughn leaned in with a scanner. Concern feigned, curiosity unveiled. Jeremy blocked him with a quiet rage. "Not your subject," he said. "Not your experiment." The chime interrupted them, a melodic call to the blessing days. Time to perform. Time to smile through teeth clenched with truth. They walked together, Jeremy's mind racing. He asked what was wrong. Lara's voice was hushed and taut. The drink, the ceremonial liquid, not symbolic. An accelerant, a trigger. And then in the hands of a priestess older than memory, came confirmation. The union had borne fruit. The twins were pregnant. The dome erupted in applause. Lights flashed. Drones closed in. But Jeremy saw none of it. He saw only the way Vaughn's eyes gleamed. Not with joy, with ownership. He reached for them. Lara pulled Jeremy back. A side door opened silently. Counselor Price stood within it. This way. No words, only urgency. The chase had begun, not just through the halls of the dome, but through the tangled corridors of power, ethics, and destiny. The corridors were narrow, the walls humming with hidden tech and forgotten pathways. Jeremy led them, but it was Price who guided their escape. Behind them, the echo of boots and authority grew fainter. Ahead, a new truth waited, one even deeper than the conspiracy just revealed. They emerged into a maintenance room reeking of oil and secrets. Inside stood Kellen, the friend, the guarantor, the orchestrator. Jeremy's fist clenched before his mind could catch up. Price intercepted, calm but firm. "He's with us. Betrayal has many shades, and this one was soaked in gray." Kellen didn't flinch under the fury in Jeremy's eyes. He spoke plainly. He had infiltrated Jenks on Earth Intelligence's orders. Stellar Bonds was a front. The goal was never love. It was conception, natural, spontaneous, and irrefutable. Human Azurian. Embryos had always failed in labs. But with Jeremy, with Lara and Mifra, something had changed. Conception had occurred. Rapid, real, and now undeniable. Why? Because they hadn't forced it. They had let it unfold. Lara stepped forward. Her hand, protective on her stomach, trembled only slightly. "What are they making?" she asked. "Weapons," Price answered. "Children born to pass for Azurians, but think like humans. Infiltrators, spies, living tools." And until now, nature had rejected the blueprint. But Jeremy and his wives had succeeded, not through compliance, but through chemistry. Through the strange miracle of mutual choice blooming in engineered soil. The fertility drink, Mifra realized aloud. It wasn't just a ceremonial touch. It was a biochemical fuse, meant to accelerate the pregnancy, meant to prove results. Now, with the whole sector watching, the evidence was undeniable. 2 unborn children, naturally conceived. The first and only successful hybrid prototypes. Jeremy wanted to scream, but all he did was breathe slow and deep as the truth solidified. Jenks wouldn't stop. They wouldn't retreat. And now, with the twins' pregnancies advanced, the clock was ticking. They had to leave, but Lara stumbled. Mifra gasped. Pain bloomed across their expressions like a warning too loud to ignore. The accelerant was working too well. Their bodies were changing faster than any pregnancy should. What had been biology had become something else. Something unstable. Something brilliant and dangerous. Jeremy didn't hesitate. He supported Lara with one arm, took Mifra's hand in the other. "We move now, not fugitives, protectors." They reached the transport station, every step shadowed by eyes unseen. As they boarded the unmarked vehicle, a new determination burned in Jeremy's chest. They would not hide. They would not run. They would fight for truth, for family, for a future not dictated by algorithms and ambition. And as the city shrank beneath them, Mifra touched her stomach, her voice quiet but resolute. "He's moving," she said. "So is mine," Lara whispered. Life had begun, and it would not be denied. The transport soared through New Proxima's aerial lanes, veering away from the embassy now wrapped in corporate siege. Jenks' forces had moved faster than anyone expected, invoking legal codes that blurred the lines between protection and possession. The twins, glowing faintly in the low light, clutched their stomachs as the pain of unnatural growth pressed harder. With each breath, Jeremy held them close, as much shield as comfort. They were no longer passengers on this journey. They were its axis. The embassy was lost a trap now, but Jeremy's mind, trained in diplomacy, found another route: the interspecies communication hub. A neutral ground, a megaphone to the galaxy. If Jenks would use law to shackle truth, then he would use truth to shatter the illusion. Mifra winced again. Jeremy leaned in concerned, but she smiled through the discomfort. "We're stronger than we look," she said. "We always have been." Her voice was proud. Lara's eyes shimmered in quiet agreement. They weren't just bearing life, they were defending it. The hub loomed ahead, faceted like a diamond amidst towers of glass. The transport landed as Jenks's own shuttles closed in. No time to hesitate. They moved. Inside, the world swirled: journalists, species of every form, languages overlapping like waves on a shore, but all eyes turned toward them. Not because they were fugitives, because they were radiant. The twins' skin pulsed with bioluminescence, a trait of Azurian pregnancy, usually subtle, now intensified beyond anything their people had seen. Beauty forged in evolution, accelerated by interference, a spectacle, a warning. Price guided them to the broadcast chamber. The alarms began to sound. They would not make it out, but they would be heard. Jeremy stood before the lens, heart hammering, the twins flanking him like celestial guardians. The light blinked red. The stream was live. He spoke, not with flourish, not with fury, but with conviction. He named Jenks. He revealed the truth. He called it what it was: a plan to weaponize the sacred, to use love and life as tools for control. And then he stepped aside. Lara spoke of harmony, of how Azurians revered the union of difference. Mifra added the fire, speaking not as a subject, but as a mother. "Our children," she said, "are not products. They are the future." Behind them, the facility trembled. Jenks' forces pushed through the doors, but something had already shifted. Alien journalists, insectoid guards, even civilians began to block the way. Quietly, deliberately. Not all beings feared power. Some still remembered what was worth protecting. The transmission ended as the doors burst open, but the galaxy had already heard, and Jeremy, still clutching the hands of his wives, whispered into the moment, "They can chase us, but they can't unhear the truth." They fled not into shadow, but into clarity. As the communication hub erupted behind them, Price led the way through hidden corridors, the pulse of alarms trailing like echoes of war drums. The broadcast had landed too cleanly, too powerfully. And now, Jenks would scramble to reclaim the narrative. But they were already too late. The seed of truth had been planted, and it would grow in the sanctuary of the Academic Consortium's medical facility, built to accommodate every known physiology. Jeremy paced. The twins were inside the birthing chamber. Blue light flickered through the translucent wall, rising and falling with each of their breaths. 6 hours ago, they had confirmed accelerated development. Now, they were in labor. He clenched his fists, not out of fear, but out of awe. These were no ordinary births. This was the moment when theory would bow to nature, when manipulation would meet resistance in the purest form of life. Children, not engineered, but willed into being through the audacity of love. The physician, alien and wise, moved with grace beyond species. The data was troubling: energy signatures never before recorded, fetal patterns that resembled no known hybrid profile. The accelerant had not just sped growth, it had awoken something. And then came Vaughn, not in person, in projection, cold as vacuum. He offered help: stabilization tech, he claimed. Without it, there would be complications, death perhaps, but the price was access, ownership. He would study them, he said, understand them. Jeremy's voice became steel. "You will not touch my children." Then came the threat. A genetic disruptor already deployed, calibrated to destroy human Azurian hybrid DNA within range. A kill switch hidden in the air itself. 1 hour to comply. The call ended. Jeremy felt his throat close. The physician ran tests. Energy readings spiked. The twins glowed brighter. Their pulses raced. It had already begun. In that moment, Jeremy realized something. Vaughn feared them not because they were dangerous, but because they were sovereign, born not of protocol, but defiance, not of lab control, but interspecies will. inside the chamber, Lara cried out. Mifra followed. The birth was near. Jeremy ran to their side, taking each hand. Their grips were fierce, desperate and electric. Something's wrong, Mifra whispered. The children are fighting, not each other. Something else. The doctor confirmed it. Defensive energy, unknown, unmeasured. And outside, the tremors of the facility signaled the disruptor's activation. Jeremy didn't flinch. He didn't run. He held their hands tighter and whispered to his unborn sons, show them who you are. The disruptor's wave struck like a whisper through steel, invisible, silent, deadly. Every sensor screamed as its signature spread through the atmosphere, hunting for the anomaly it was built to erase. But the anomaly, those two unborn lives, did not retreat. They awakened. Jeremy stood at the center of the storm, his arms outstretched, each hand gripping the future. Lara on one side, drenched in sweat and glowing like a sapphire star. Mifra on the other, breath ragged, skin radiating a pulsing light that beat in rhythm with her unborn child's growing power. And then, from within them, it came, a wave of brilliance. Not heat, not energy, something deeper, raw intention. Made radiant, the infants, not yet fully in this world, reached outward. Their bodies, still forming, called on a power neither human nor Azurian had ever touched. Their hybrid code was not a compromise. It was a fusion. And fusion, when unshackled, does not ask permission. The glow expanded, enfolding the chamber. Every piece of equipment dimmed, then flared. Medical devices hummed and fell silent. The air itself shimmered. Kellen burst into the room, shouting over the chaos. It's them. The feedback is turning the disruptor inward. Outside, the Jenks perimeter faltered. Men collapsed. Tech sparked. The sky above twisted into a corona of reverse energy, and inside the birthing chamber, silence fell. Then came a cry, sharp, defiant, alive. Lara, tears streaming, held her son pale blue, with tufts of blonde hair and eyes that saw more than they should. His skin pulsed gently, as if the universe still echoed in him. Thalen, she whispered, and moments later, Mifra bore the second child, darker blue, marked with a crescent birthmark on his shoulder. His cry followed, a tone that resonated in Jeremy's chest like a calling. Kieran, she said, strong like his father. Jeremy touched them both. Tiny hearts beat beneath his fingers, and in that contact, the glow surged again. The physician gasped, there, stabilizing. The disruptor's influence. It's being neutralized, not resisted, dissolved. Jeremy stepped back, holding both sons in his arms. Their eyes opened, not in confusion, not in fear, but in recognition. The message was simple, spoken in light. We are here, and we are not yours to claim. Outside the walls of the birthing chamber, Jenks's fortress of dominance crumbled. The disruptor, their ultimate failsafe, turned against them. Sparks flared from rooftop units. Weapons seized. Communications failed. Security units dropped to their knees, groaning under the pressure of a force they had never planned for, a defense not made by scientists, but born from the refusal of two children to be owned. Within the chamber, the light dimmed not from loss, but from completion. The field receded like a tide, leaving calm in its place. The boys lay still, eyes wide, as if even in their first hours they understood what had been asked of them. Jeremy stood tall, a child in each arm, not trembling, not cowering, triumphant. Vaughn's image flared on the nearby display, distorted and panicked. His composure gone, his threats hollow. What have you done? He shouted. Jeremy walked to the console, calm as moonlight. I didn't do anything, he replied. My sons did. They didn't fight you because they're weapons. They fought you because they're free. They are ours, Vaughn hissed. Jenks property, intellectual capital, they are life, Jeremy interrupted. Created by love, not schematics. And if you try to take them again, they will answer you. Outside, through the viewports, the disruptor exploded in a silent bloom of firelight. The sky cleared. Jenks's final grip gone. Vaughn fled, his transport marked and tracked by Earth intelligence. Price received confirmation as he disappeared into the void, his crimes already documented, his protection evaporating. He won't make it far, Kellen muttered. Jeremy turned to his son, still glowing, still watching. A thought settled in his mind like the first snowflake on untouched ground. This was never about rebellion. It was about redefinition. The physician confirmed what Jeremy already knew in his bones. The children were stable. The unnatural acceleration had burned out in the energy burst. Their development would now proceed at a natural pace if anything about them could still be called natural. Their DNA, the doctor said, was a harmony of species, adaptive, resilient, and entirely new, a new branch of life, not tools, not anomalies, beginnings. 6 months passed. Their new home stood on a neutral colony, half human, half Azurian, governed by shared counsel. Peace, not truce. The boys grew faster than expected. Their gifts remained, quiet but present. Toys floated, shadows danced to their laughter, and Jeremy, standing on the balcony beside Kellen, watched the sun set over a world he had not chosen but one he now called home. Evening settled softly over the colony, painting the sky in hues both alien and achingly familiar. Jeremy stood with Kieran in one arm, Thalen perched on his hip, both boys babbling at the rising moons. Their skin still shimmered, now and then, like echoes of the light they had once summoned. No longer a defense, now simply part of them. Behind him, Lara's voice floated through the open door, singing an old Azurian lullaby, its cadence slow and reverent. Mifra prepared dinner, her movements precise, graceful, woven with care that defied language. The ordinary had become extraordinary, a hybrid family, a quiet hearth, a world reborn, not through conquest, but through choice. Kellen joined him, holding the glasses. You know, he said with a crooked smile, for a man who came to stellar bonds with no idea what he wanted, you ended up with the most unique family in the sector. Jeremy laughed, a full, unguarded sound. It's more than I ever thought possible. Kellen handed him a datapad. The header glowed softly. Galactic Council Appointment Ambassador for Hybrid Affairs. They want someone who understands both sides, Kellen said. Someone who lived it, who fought for it. Jeremy looked at the document, then down at his sons. Kieran giggled, a nearby toy lifting gently from the floor. Thalen reached out, touching his father's chest with fingers that pulsed like starlight, not chosen by law, chosen by the universe. That night, after dinner, after stories, after small feet had fallen still in the cradle of sleep, Jeremy lay in bed, one arm around each of his wives. It was no longer strange. It was no longer accidental. It was simply real. Mifra traced the lines on his chest. The AI wasn't wrong, she murmured. No? He asked, smiling in the dark. Human. Males do have remarkable stamina. Lara teased from the other side. He chuckled, but the laughter faded into something deeper. Maybe the AI measured the surface, he said softly, but it didn't understand what truly drives us. And what is that? Lara whispered. The need to belong, to build, to protect. Not just to reproduce but to love, even when everything says we shouldn't. There, in the darkness, they held him tighter. Not because he was human, but because he had chosen them and been chosen in return. And so Jeremy slept, not as a pawn, not as a rebel, but as a father, a husband, and a man who had helped shape a new story for the stars, one where humanity's legacy would not be written in conquest or science, but in light. In love. In family. The true needs of humanity, it turned out, were not reproductive. They were connective. And when fulfilled, the galaxy itself took notice.